Hello everyone, welcome to Canteen Cup. My name is Scott. Hope everybody's having a good day. Shooting this video from a little bit different venue here. I'm in my little side-by-side UTV that I picked up used a couple weeks ago. And where I store it is in between my home, which is over here, and my shipping container which is over here, which I use for storage. There's about 8 foot in the middle, and this makes a nice little spot to keep the UTV safe from whatever. And but anyhow, it's a shady spot and it's sunny out today and it's still a little warm, not as hot as it's been. So taking a little break today. Had a couple days of kind of hard work getting that hole dug and getting the cement poured in that antenna tower base in. So taking a little easy today, but I had some thoughts that I wanted to talk about, and it's homesteading, prepping, and Robert Rogers. Kind of an odd mix there, but as I was pondering today and the past couple days, I was really, thinking about this whole homesteading prepper thing. And in my mind for a long time, I was kind of associating them as being one and the same, but really they're kind of not. I mean, they have some links, but in generally they're two different trains of thoughts, and I want to share them with you at least how I think about it. Now, I'm not an expert in this, and I'm sure there's a lot of different views and things on this, but I just wanted to share what I think of homesteading and prepping in general, and then we'll talk about Robert Rogers and how that all kind of ties in. So when I think of homesteading, I think of staying in place, bugging in. Several other people out there, Pastor Joe Fox, a few others, talk about you should be at your bug out location, and that's kind of homesteading, and that's where I am. I do not plan on leaving this place unless unless the enemy's at the door, so to speak. I am fleeing. I'm not bugging out to a bug out location. So I think that's one of the differences between homesteaders and preppers, is that homesteaders plan to stay and preppers plan to go. They're always going somewhere. And another thought I had about it was that homesteaders, to me, the homesteaders plan to live. We get out there, we take care of the land, we grow gardens, we get livestock. We do things to promote life. And preppers, this is really more of a pun than anything else. Preppers are planning to die. They've got the zombie apocalypse. They've got the world without rule, SHTF, all this stuff, all doom and gloom. And so I think that's another difference between homesteaders and preppers. Homesteaders plan to live, preppers plan to die. And that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's really the mentality. If you're a homesteader, you're planning on living life, living a peaceful life. If you're a prepper, you're planning for chaos. And so I think that's another difference. And I think another thing, is that homesteaders tend to be, more worried about their land. They're more worried about, taking care of their land, improving their land. And to me, a lot of preppers are worried about things. They guns, knives, bullets, plate armor, things like that. And while a prepper to me is planning to go to war, to me a homesteader is planning on going hunting or fishing. similar, but the mindset's just a little divergent, a little bit different, and I think that's, that's why I started thinking about this. At one time, I owned a couple AR-15 rifles, and then, I received revelation that I should get rid of those, and I have. I don't have any AR-15s, and so, and I don't feel undergunned or ungunned. I still have guns, but the Lord told me that I did not need those, and I needed to get rid of them, so I did. Now, that being said, I have a couple bolt-action rifles that are magazine-fed, and I think, looking at it from a homesteader's point of view, I'm more worried about hunting and getting food for my family than I am worried about, going to some zombie apocalypse in full battle rattle. That's just not part of my life. And, getting armor plate, I see a lot of people on the different forums and different YouTubes, how they're gearing up for all this stuff. And for me, I did the math. And you add your weapon, your ammo, your plate carrying, all the other stuff, you're talking about 40 plus pounds of stuff on your body. And if you're not training to carry that, then when that time comes, you're going to be wanting. And I'm just putting it out there. I know some of you guys, probably run 3 miles in full armor, but I think most of us don't. And so, it's just like today. Today is a little bit cooler here in Georgia than it has been, but it's still in the mid 80s. It's still warm and it's still humid. And if I was in full armor plate with the cummerbund and everything else, I'd probably have heat stroke. I'm not a young guy anymore either, but I think that's the mindset. And I think, and I don't feel undergunned when it comes to defending my family either, because I feel I have enough weapons, enough guns to defend my family, but I'm not going to get into a protracted firefight. That's just not going to happen. I don't have the logistics to support me getting into a firefight. And so really my plan, is to run away, but, and live to fight another day. Now, segueing that into Robert Rogers, for those who don't know who Robert Rogers is, he was a colonel back in the French and Indian Wars, fought for the British at the time, and he created Rogers Rangers. And they were, at that time, they were the special operations group of that day. And what made them special operations is they practiced unconventional warfare. Back in that time period, armies would go out onto a big field, line up, and then shoot each other. Well, what Robert's Rangers did is they did a couple things that was very innovative at the time. One is they all dressed in green, and that was a form of camouflage. If you look at the British uniforms back in the day, they were like red and white, and Rogers Rangers were dressed in green. And then they did not fight in a conventional manner. They skirmished. They came in, they did a raid, they killed the cattle, because if you kill the cattle, you're killing the food. They didn't have supermarkets back then. And so they were practicing guerrilla warfare. So they were very unconditional. And when Robert Rogers recruited for people, and he recruited, his officers recruited for people, they weren't looking for soldiers. That was not their first requirement. Their first two requirements were, one, that they were woodsmen, people very apt to living in the woods, and that they were able to travel quickly in the woods. That was two requirements. On top of that, they were required to have a musket, and they were required to have a hatchet. and then everything else, their bedroll, whatever, was kind of up to them. But those were the requirements. But I thought it was interesting that being a soldier was not one of the requirements, but being a woodsman was. And so let me circle back to the homesteader prepper kind of person. In my mind's eye, when I think about a homesteader, I think about the homesteader being more of a Rogers Ranger than a, American Infantry, Special Forces, today's Ranger. But they were more of a, more of the Rogers Rangers type, where they would, if they did get into conflicts, it would be skirmishes. It would not be, set in battles. They would fight from ambush and things like that. And so I think that's a different requirement. But where I'm going with this is kind of, I'm treating, my thoughts on defense, along those lines, that I'm not going to get in protracted battles, but I could see myself, traveling across the countryside, traveling lightly, relying on my skills as a woodsman to carry the day. And if you were a woodsman, if you were doing like Rogers Rangers did, where they covered a lot of ground over a short period of time, you're not going to have 20 pounds of plate on you, and then another 20 pounds of other gear, and then another 20 pounds of the stuff you need to subsist off of. They traveled very light. And so, part of my renaissance about this is going back to my basic woodsman skills. And I think that almost takes a little bit of a preference over, marksmanship, of course, is part of being a woodsman. So I still shoot, and being a marksman, I think, is important no matter what you do, because you procure food, you procure safety. And so that being said, but in looking at my life now, I'm more concerned about making my homestead work. I've got almost 6 acres of raw land that I've got to slowly turn into gardens and vineyards and orchards and whatever, and that takes a lot of time. I don't have a lot of other time for this other stuff, and I think that's a difference. I think, to me, I think preppers are more suburban, urban oriented, where they're not taking care of a property. They're not necessarily gardening or raising chickens or goats or whatever. There's a lot of work. I mean, I've been out on this property now just for a couple of weeks, and it's just amazing the amount of work. I don't have time for some of this other stuff. I don't have time to worry about, what's the best plate, or what's the, or keeping my AR-15 and buying, I don't have time, because I still work, and there's a lot of work I have to do here. And so, for me, I'm pulling away from the prepper side of the house, and I'm moving into the homestead side of the house, because there's just so much to do. I don't have time for the other stuff. And it just got me thinking, well, if I'm like this, I'm sure there are lots of other people like this. So, if you're a prepper, that's fine. If that's your bag, and I'm not dissing you. All I'm saying is that we're a little bit different, a little bit divergent. We're all kind of prepping. But when I say a prepper, I'm talking about this, and then when I say a homesteader, I'm kind of going this way. So it's like we're the same but only different. And each one has its merits and demerits, however you want to put it, and really it boils down to whatever floats your boat, whatever category you're in. That's fine. Like I said, I'm not knocking the preppers. I'm not promoting the homesteaders or vice versa. All I'm saying is that for me, I see myself more as a homesteader kind of person. The web gear, carrying, a full combat load of ammo, all that stuff just really doesn't interest me anymore. What really interests me now is getting my land working for me, and being able to, maybe not permaculture, but to have gardens and to have, some berry bushes out and some fruit trees maybe. But it's going to take a lot of work. And that's where I have to put my money in. I can't really put my money into buying AR-15s when I need a tiller or a tractor or whatever, and all that costs money. And like most people, there's only X amount of money available for me to do those things. Plus, I have a deep hand in emergency communications, and I invest a lot of money in that. That's a service I provide to my community, to my church, to my groups, whatever. And it's a special skill set that takes years to develop. And I know a lot of people kind of blow it off, but until you get into it, you don't understand. It's best I can tell you. So anyhow, that's just some of my musings for today. I just wanted to share with you. I wanted to get out. I know I've been, away from YouTube for a couple of weeks. I didn't have internet because when I moved from my old house to out here, I went from 3 acres to 6 acres, and I'm much further out in the country now. It took me a good 2.5, 3 weeks to get my internet going, and I don't have a permanent internet yet. Right now I'm using, it's an over-the-air internet. The company I'm getting it from, they call it Air Fiber. It's the internet is passed back and forth via radio signals, and it's pretty zippy. It really is. I have no complaints with it, but I have to have an antenna on top of the house, and right now I'm getting pretty good service, but once I get my tower up, one of the reasons why I built that tower is to put an internet antenna at the top so I can get even better signals, because we use the internet for our business. So in a couple weeks it'll get even better, but at least right now I could do some YouTube videos and have a little bit of fun. And anyhow, so ponder what I say. Homesteader, prepper, wherever you fall, fine. I'm not trying to start arguments or anything. I'm just kind of musing, but think about it. And if you want to leave comments, comment below. Love to hear from you. I try to keep up with with that. Not that I get a whole lot of comments anyhow, because I've got a rather small subscribers right now. I hope to grow, but I did want to let everybody know I didn't abandon the channel. I was just 2-3 weeks of moving. We're still not quite done yet, but we're here. The old house is gone, and so now it's just setting up shop. So that's all I have for y'all. Everybody take care, stay safe, and stay secure.